Today we're going to talk about the biggest mistakes that emerging bands make time and time again. Hey everybody, I'm Bruce from WaterBear. This channel is all about helping you on your journey as a musician. Now my career spans from the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, all the way to today, from major labels, hit records, all that stuff, right the way to the whole DIY ethic today, where we do things a lot differently. So let's get started. So at WaterBear, it's all about the concept of the artist, the musician being in control. And how do we do that? We have a DIY approach to our career. Record deals may come and go, but essentially at the core of it is you and your music and your realistic and obtainable plan. And if you want tips like this week in, week out, then like and subscribe, you know what to do. Tip number one is to understand the role of the artist. Now that might seem quite obvious, but your job as a musician is not simply to sound good. There's loads of people that do that. That's craft. What we're talking about is art. That's why it's called artist. An artist speaks for an audience. So your job is to do that. How do you do it? Well, obviously, your style, your brand, the way you play live, that all counts for an awful lot. But the single most important thing here is lyrics and subject matter. What are you saying and who are you speaking for? So good examples of that are people like Bob Dylan, who represented social and cultural and political change. Rage Against the Machine, who are obviously all about fighting the man. Pink, for example, who that's about female empowerment and taking control of your own life. Tip two, work at pace. Work quickly. It's about constant day-to-day improvements on your songwriting, your set, your live show, your recorded material, your social media. You are telling a story and you've got to engage people in a constantly evolving story. This is not necessarily about releasing a huge amount of material. Quality is always the most important thing. But if you think of an artist like Prince, the work ethic there, Lady Gaga, Beyonce, and all the hot bands around Brighton right now, these guys and ladies are working extremely hard and they are your competition. So now we're going to do a little experiment and take your career and kind of make a bit of a prediction of how things are going to go for you over the next 5 years. Now, do you know that saying that the most predictable indicator of future performance is past performance? Well, let's apply that to your band. So if you've done this for the past year, which involves 3 pub gigs and putting out an EP, and you times that by 5, you're going to get a curve on the graph and you're going to end up there. I.e. you've done 15 gigs and released a few EPs and maybe an album. That's not a career. So if you want to be there, you've got to get yourself on that graph. And this leads us on nicely to tip number 3, plan. If you don't have a realistic and obtainable plan, all you've got is a bunch of demos and a pipe dream. So how do we take that strong desire to have a career in music and make this project happen? How do we make that realistic and achievable? And if you've been watching this channel, you know what I mean by a plan. Campaigns, teams, thinking like a big band. If you've missed those videos, here's the links down below. Are there any examples of bands who have good plans? Well, yes. In fact, it's very hard to find examples of professional bands who don't have good plans. Sometimes people just make an artistically amazing record and it just blows up, the whole Guns N' Roses thing, the Nirvana thing. You know, I get it. There are artists that are just that good that it happens, but they tend to have a very, very difficult job managing it afterwards. So what we're talking about is a long-term sustainable career, and that requires management and it requires planning. Making a plan for a band or helping a band with their management strategy and putting all this together is what we do day in, day out. It's bread and butter to us. So if you've got any questions about your plan, drop them in the comments and I'll answer and do my best to help. That's it from me. I've been Bruce and you have been brilliant. See you next week on the WaterBear channel, where we're looking at taking your career where you are now and getting you to where you want to be. And don't forget, if you get really into music and it becomes a very important part of your life, you can study at WaterBear. You can work on this stuff day in, day out in the context of a BA honours degree validated by the University of Chichester, or even a master's qualification. You can study on site in the heart of Brighton or anywhere in the world online.